One day she will see an affordable village of tiny homes for single homeless moms with children. With experience as a person of color, homeless woman, survivor of domestic violence, and mother of a small child, her commitment to this dream is strong within her. It has not always been easy or as fast as she would like. And when I talked with her this week, she was feeling a little discouraged with the rain starting and needing to get the walls and roof on the house you see in the slides in a minute. Her current step along the way to a village for women and children is to complete single tiny homes that can be placed as units on private property. She has a tiny home being built right now on the Quaker property in Guerneville, on Guerneville Road here in Santa Rosa. Movable tiny homes and other structures are allowed on most lots in Santa Rosa because an amendment to the Resilient Cities Ordinance was passed by City Council earlier this year. River's biggest challenge has been to find property for her tiny houses. She could also use some help working on the tiny house on Guerneville Road. I'm sorry she could not be here in person to tell you more about her project. But Dinah and Nico are here.
So I'm Dinah Backrack, and this is Miko Sorrell. And we met River, we're both members of Redwood Forest Friends Meeting, the Quaker community here in Santa Rosa in the county. And we met River when she began to attend Redwood Forest with her little son Asa, and this was 2 or 3 years ago. And we were extremely inspired by her as a person and what she had begun in terms of her vision and her plan to raise money to be able to build 6 to 7 tiny houses for a tiny house village for homeless families, as Catherine was sharing. The first one being for herself and her son Asa. And we have been very involved and excited to see those. Has taken longer than we thought, given the fires and much that has occurred, that this tiny house is finally in process. And I guess the slideshow is not up yet, but there are pictures of how it's progressing. So we have some thoughts about our needs, and I want to let Nico speak to you about that.
I think the slides are just about to show up, which is very nice news. So here we have the tiny house being constructed on the land behind the Redwood Forest Friends Meeting House on Guerneville Road. I've been one of the volunteer builders of that in the last month or so, and it's been a whale of fun. It's really exciting to see the walls go up. There's a picture of Asa. The walls are framed. The trailer itself is 30 feet long in its lower portion and 10 feet on the gooseneck portion, so it will actually house River and Asa until Asa is emancipated, as opposed to many tiny homes that end up being designed for small children who have to remain small their entire lives in order to remain in the house. Not a good long-term plan. But this is now we're now seeing this as a demonstration project, and it's under the care of the American Tiny House Association, of which River is the Sonoma County lead chapter person, and also the lead organizer of Tiny Houses for Sonoma County, previously known as Tiny Houses for Humanity. This doesn't have the most recent pictures because there's now a bump out on the back end, which will be a nice window seat in the back bedroom. But there are 3 current needs that this project has. And ultimately, we hope that this is the demonstration project that makes it possible for Sonoma County to move forward with major tiny house villages, especially for single parents and their children, but beyond that. We have to get this house built, and we have to get this house landed somewhere in order for the county and the city to see this as a viable project. So this is number 1, and we need to move from here to the wider vision. So the current needs that this project has to get from this point to that point are, we need a new volunteer foreman for the project beginning October 31st. We've had a very capable person on this job from July until now, and that person is needing to move on. So we're needing a new volunteer foreman beginning November 1st, October 31st. We also need more volunteer builders. Not people with no skills at all, but you don't have to be a certified contractor to be helpful. Somebody who has skills in electricity and plumbing. The roof is being placed on today with some volunteer help. Those are two needs, the foreman, the volunteer builders, and then we need ideas or offers of places that this particular tiny house can land as its demonstration project. And I have a lot of very lenient information regarding Santa Rosa's Resilient Cities Ordinance demonstration project printed at the back table. Would like to hand these out. Also, a question-answer sheet, frequently asked questions about tiny houses for Sonoma County, and this wonderful, not to be missed, pink clipboard, which has opportunities for you to put your name down for more information on the project, to volunteer yourself, or to just come up with an idea. I have a friend who recently retired as a contractor. Maybe would be interested in being the foreman for the project. We'll take responsibility for contacting that person. We just need the ideas and the contact information, so please see us at the back table.
Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Miguel Elliott. He's the owner of locally based Living Earth Structures and has been a leader in the natural building movement for over 20 years. Did you see his little ginger house outside? He specializes in leading workshops, building in schools, and building community-oriented ovens, benches, and small living earth structures. Miguel.
Good afternoon. My name is Miguel, and I'm with Living Earth Structures. And I've been doing natural building work for about 20 years now. And yes, that's my little mobile hut out there, the gingerbread hut. Is the, you have my stick in there? Okay. So I've done a lot of traveling around the world, and I've seen a lot of different kinds of, I've been to a lot of different villages around the world, and I've seen a lot of alternative ways of building that are very different than the way that we build here locally. And so, local construction pretty much is, focuses on using 2x6, milled wood, fiberglass insulation, drywall, OSB board, paint, which are all expensive and are all toxic. And so I do another kind of building that doesn't use any of that material. And I think we need to be looking at more alternatives to construction. There's other ways of doing construction rather than just conventional construction that you see going up all over the place. And so I've worked on houses that cost maybe $80 in materials. It doesn't have to cost very much to build a house. So that's what I'm advocating for, is doing alternative construction that, so this, I have some pictures here. So I have a kind of like, so these are like the little huts that I build here. So, and I have slides of them also, but these are just, the idea. This is at the Solar Living Center up in Hopland. And so this took me less than a month of time to build, less than $2,000 in materials. It's super well insulated, it's very durable, it's fire resilient, using all locally sourced materials. And it was a lot of fun in the building process and involved people without a whole lot of construction experience to come and help and be involved in the building process, which I think is really important. An argument against the housing first model is that if you just give somebody a home and as a charity, you're not giving them an opportunity to be empowered to be involved in the building of that home. But what I'm encouraging is to build structures, have them framed, and then have them built by the residents themselves. Can actually, if they are able, they can actually be involved in the the building of the home. So, and I have been working with engineers to have these structures built to code. If we need to follow code, it is possible. But I have a kind of design that we actually don't need to follow the codes. And that's what I'm highly advocating for. I've been working with a village in Oakland that has been following an ordinance there that is they're exempt from following any building codes. Okay, great. So we have our slides up now. And so, yeah, so this is, I call it a palatable common because I build the structures out of wooden shipping pallets. They're free. It's a good receptacle for your insulation. The insulation does not have to be fiberglass insulation. It can be straw, it can be plastic, it can be clothes, it can be cardboard. It doesn't have to be fiberglass insulation or foam. It can be a free insulation. And the inside, this is the inside, it can be very cozy inside. So I say brown is the new green, right? So this is way beyond green building. I don't really consider green building to be all that environmentally friendly, actually. So this is my house. This is my little sleeping pod. This is my kitchen. Again, this took maybe 3 weeks to build, less than $1,500 in materials. This took about a month. And this is also built out of pallets, right? Just wooden shipping pallets filled with straw, covered in earth and plaster. I actually had a fire there this week. I made the mistake of leaving some linseed oil on a rag, and it caused a big fire here. The fire went right up to here, right up to it, and it didn't burn the house at all. These are also a couple huts I did at a retreat center. So I also call these eco huts. Eco stands for Earth and Composite Originals, is my acronym. So when I work with an engineer, he calls my structure, he doesn't call it Adobe, he doesn't call it Cobb, he calls it an Earth and Composite, right? And so each one, it can be different. Each one can be designed and help to be built by the residents themselves. And again, each one of these, this maybe took a few weeks to build. This pallets, earth. Now this is actually with Adobe bricks, and I do a living roof. Another reason why I call it a palatable cobbing, because I do an edible roof on top. Okay. So again, inside the eco hut, this is a rocket stove where you can make a fire here. The heat goes inside the barrel and it heats up the bed. And you can actually cook on the barrel, and it's a very efficient way of heating up a space. And it being so small, it doesn't take very long to heat up. Another little hobbit cobbin, I call it. This is the sleeping space here. The bathroom shower is here. The little kitchenette is here. It's about 300 square feet. And then on all the earth I use was right from up here. So again, super affordable to build. Unfortunately, at this point, though, they're not legal, and so we need to be able to allow us to do these ordinances to allow us to build these structures, without needing permits, because they're very durable. This is my shower. This is a composting toilet. This is the shower. So this is also built out of pallets. So it shows you how water resilient this is. I build hot tubs out of Adobe, out of earth, right? That's what one of the questions people ask is, what keeps these just from washing away in the rain? Well, if you do it right, then they're very, very durable. There's earthen structures built in England that gets a lot of rain over 700 years ago that are still being lived in now. I'm a huge advocate of composting toilets. There's not a whole lot of conversation about them, but this is a system that I have at my house. It's very effective, for our composting toilets. So it can be a very clean system, and so so I think there needs to be more conversations about how effective a good composting toilet system really is, and you don't need all this expensive plumbing and just the wastewater. This is another eco hut at the Solar Living Center. And so this is how I do my huts. Super easy. I'm just going to share how I do it. I use pier blocks around in a circle. It's been proven that building on pier blocks instead of a concrete foundation is actually stronger in an earthquake because it bounces more than sways. And I don't have to use pressure treated wood. I can use this recycled wood. So I put my uprights attached to the pier blocks. I put the pallets and I fill them with straw. This has done a 2-day process so far. And then in a weekend, the work party, we put the earth over the structure. Done. So the benefits of eco huts, it's easy to fund to build, it's affordable, you can build it for less than $3,000 in materials, it's fire resilient. The fire would just turn the structure into ceramic, makes it more waterproof. Eco-friendly, it's using all locally sourced materials, right? I can just use earth right from the ground, right, to build my structure. I don't have to spend any money at all. Durable, builds community in the process of building these structures. It's aesthetically pleasing. It's very well insulated from the heat and the cold, which you can experience. If you go inside the little gingerbread hut, which cost me less than $800 to build that thing, it's very cool right now. You go inside, and at night, when it cools off at night, you go inside, it's much warmer inside. And it can be built to code, right? If it has to be built to code, I do have these engineered drawings to have them built to code if need be. Okay. Oh yeah. It's just way overkill though. So this is the gingerbread hut. I encourage you to go outside. This is the inside, and this is in the paper last year. This was the hut was at Bioneers. So this was the little hut that is at the this is at the village in Oakland now, right? And so somebody's been living in it now for the past since January. This is an article in the San Jose Mercury News. Our tiny homes, a new American dream, and so this talks about the gingerbread hut. This is a village, the village in Oakland. I built a pizza oven there, and this is where the little brown caboose is what is at. And they're the first village in Oakland that is actually following the ordinance that was passed to allow emergency shelters to be built without permits, right? And so they've built about 8 of these already, and they're building more. And each one is costing a few $1,000s, but the residents themselves actually are helping to build the structures, right? So again, a lot of the structures I do are done during like weekend workshop, work parties and things. So people with no construction experience can actually help put the earth on the wall and have a lot of fun in the process. Another thing I advocate for is some people just like to live in tents, and I don't want to discourage anybody who actually wants to live in a tent. I love camping out. I love living in a tent. If you want to live in a tent, great, wonderful, super, super low impact. Let's encourage people who want to live in a tent to live in a tent. But to have a nice enclosure around it, not have like a chain link fence, have a nice earthen wall. I just did this wall. It's a 130-foot long earthen wall up at the Solar Living Center. If you go up there, I recommend checking it out. And materials were close to nothing. Again, it's 3 pallets wide, straw, earth, and so it's a nice little enclosure. It's a sound barrier wall, right? And so the residents could actually help put the earth on the wall. They can decorate it how they want. They can have a little oven there. They can have benches. They can have their little huts. So I think we need to be talking about that too. Okay, so this is a little a vision that I had. One of the villages I went to in Africa, I kind of went into this village and it was very much set up like this. And I was like, this makes so much sense, of course. Yeah, and so basically I call it Sunshine Village. And so the way it's set up is you have 10 units all around in a circle, right? And this, you could call this a house, right? So on 1 acre of land that allows a house, you could build something like this, right? And so each unit, you could have 2 people living in each unit. Each unit would have its own little shower, toilet. It would all be one covered roof over the whole thing, which would be a lot easier to build. And all the wood would all be used locally sourced wood. I think we need to be advocating for that more also. Now, all the wood from the fires, it's completely good wood that's just being shredded up and not used, but that could be easily milled. And it's been a year now that wood is dry. We need to be encouraging local millers to mill it up, use that for the wood, for the framing, and for the roofs. You can do a living roof over it, which makes it much better insulation. And solar panels, common central, Cobzebo, I call it, a gazebo built out of Cobzebo. And then, and of course, the people living in them can help build them also. And the walls would all be built with the pallets, So no 2x6s with fiberglass insulation, drywall, OSB board, paint, all that nonsense. No, we're doing it like super, super affordable and just as durable, right? Yeah. So these are the features here, right? Okay. The Cobzebo I mentioned. So this is what the center would be like, a couple ovens in the middle, a communal gathering space, some nice earthen sculpting on the side, just really encouraging the sense of community in the center of the village. Again, so when I take the gingerbread house in parades, people love it, and people really see this. People go inside all the time and say, oh my gosh, I could totally live in this. This is a great solution. And they ask me, how much does this cost to build? I'm like, I don't know, like no more than $1,000. And you know, there's no Simpson ties, no bolts. I mean, it's just hammer and nails and screws and and recycled wood and a couple little cracks, you know, but nothing major from, you know, when they're driving down the road. So, you know, again, just kind of in summary, you know, conventional construction uses this fiberglass insulation, drywall, and paint, and there's really not a whole lot of people proposing alternatives to this kind of construction. People think, oh, that's just how they do it. You know, like most tiny houses are also using, you know, this conventional construction, but we don't need to. You know, there's other ways of doing it, and you know, the benefits: durable, affordable, fire resilient, easy and fun to build, well insulated, eco-friendly, locally sourced materials. And so this is my contact information. I have a booth set up over here, and if you want to take a look at the engineered plans, I do have those. I have a book here called Accomplishments that has different pictures of my natural building work. And I think that's about it.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we have another little technical difficulty here, so Scott, we're gonna save yours to the first one on the next round, okay? And it's just about time for a break here. But before we go to our break, because we started a little bit behind, I want to give you guys a little chance for some reflection. So you have Post-its inside your folder, and if you just take a moment just to yourself and think about something that you saw so far today that makes you feel hopeful, or something new that you saw that you didn't know about, or that makes you just a little more excited. So think about that, and maybe jot a little note down.
We're going to be passing these things on to officials and other people, the administrative people. So please think about that. We'll help collate that for you.
If there's something you really like, you think, oh yeah, I want Ms. Combs to know that. I want her to know that I'm for this or that or the other, or well, maybe that not so good, or why can't these two things work together? So maybe put a little note down, and then after you've written something down, turn to someone next to you and share your ideas. Share what you're thinking, what you find interesting.
Right now?
Yeah, right now, because it's not quite break yet. This is yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, our first speaker is Scott Wagner. He raised his kids in Sonoma County. He works on local homelessness policy and funding, and is homeless action site coordinator during police sweeps. He recently spent a few weeks in the Northwest investigating village approaches to housing instability. Scott?
Thanks, folks. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here, and a pleasure to speak with you about villages a little bit. I wanted to start here. This is from a group of activists in Oakland. They're in front of the Oakland mayor's home, and they're protesting sweeps. And I just want to highlight that when we talk about villages, we're talking about communities. They're almost synonyms. And the notion of community is exactly what's out there when you look at something that's super ugly. And let's go on and let's look at something that doesn't look very nice. Okay. Horrible, right? This is in Oakland. It's not horrible. What it is it's a place where several people live. They have a cover over them. They have some space away from the world. They're protected. And their friends are nearby. Friendship is so important when it comes to villages, when it comes to community. It's essential. And I just want to emphasize that here at the beginning, talking about villages. Villages are this notion that people move together in life. We're social creatures. That's not just a phrase that we lackadaisically should use. I was sitting with Steve Singleton one day at one of our encampments, 3 back, and he was just talking to us. And then all of a sudden he heard something. I didn't really hear it. I just heard a noise. He runs into his tent, runs away, and comes back about 3 or 4 minutes later, and he saves someone's life with someone who had overdosed. Well, if you're separate and single the way that the city and the county endorse right now, pushing everyone away, scattering them into small groups, you don't have the opportunity for that kind of support. And on the spiritual and on the mental end, there are many, many, many things that are just exactly like that. Simply having friends that you can relate to on the street is so important. That notion of community, it becomes more and more and more essential the further and further down the economic rungs that we fall. This is in Portland. They have the same problems that we have, but they have some advantages, and this is something about villages that we need to understand, is that villages are getting implemented healthily in the Northwest in particular, but also other places in America. But they still have the same problems. The villages haven't taken over any specific place. In Portland, perhaps 2% of the homeless are in cogent villages that people have structured. So all of this stuff that you'll see is all brand new and still very, very small percentages of people, even in the most progressive communities. This is a hut in Oakland. This is the beginnings of a hut in Oakland, and you'll see there where, people are building these things, but it takes time, and so you see the pieces of it. This happens to be the very bottom base and the foundation of theirs. Well, I just want to show you this because a lot of what's important about village life is ingenuity and flexibility. Everyone is different, every village is different, every place is different, every situation is different. This person designed their home so that you can take this and rotate it out the window and take a shower. This is a tiny, tiny wood stove. It's about 9 inches square inside. Another one at this same conference had like a $350 air conditioner that was about this big. And it was perfect, and I think it ran off of 80 watts. You have opportunities for creativity to grow, just like grass out from in between cracks in the concrete. That young lady there, we just blew through, but she decided she wanted to use the space underneath her bed, so she built these giant, things that came out with all of her stuff, and it's 4.5 feet long. Get out in the morning and do all that. It's amazing. And then this is, a $80 solution for toiletry and showers. It just simply allows you to cover whatever it is you're doing. And we, as homeless people, we can certainly figure out a way to use that effectively with a little bit of water and an $80 bucket of some sort, or less, of course, and yet we don't. We don't have that privilege when we're out in the streets dealing with the city and the county oppressing us. This is a Cobb security building that is at Opportunity Village in Portland. Portland has one of the oldest villages. Opportunity Village has been around since about 2000. It is wholly self-funded. It has about 44, 45 houses. You can keep going with it. This is an example of community doing something very specific. One of them just sat down and said, yeah, if you want to do stuff to fulfill your 10 hours a week, why, you know, go clean up the dog poo left by the lazy owners, scrub out the green compost. It's specific, it's detailed, it's what happens when a community gets together to build the miracle of working together to make people whole. This is Opportunity Village's community center. Some villages in the Northwest have tents that they use for community, or they double it up with the city or with the kitchen. This one isn't that way. This is an actual building that they've built. And here are some of the homes that are in Opportunity Village. This is, I want to show this because again, you know, people don't understand this very basic village issue or life. Here is a place to go potty. Here is a place for handicapped people who can't go potty in the middle of the night 70 feet away, who put their stuff there when it's time and when it's appropriate. And it all gets taken care of by the vendor together. Elegant, simple, beautiful really in its own way, even though, yeah, it doesn't look nice. A lot of these solutions don't look nice, but they're beautiful and we need to see them that way. Here's sorry about the noise here. Here's an example of a situation where they had a good idea. They spent, I think, $180,000 in this village to provide electricity for all the places, but then they did it over ground. And so they ended up having all these things that they had to go over. It's a nightmare. So they stopped that. And that's another illustration of how villages are still very, very experimental. We still have a lot of mistakes to make. We still have a lot of fantastic discoveries to find. And that's part of living in 2018 right now and moving ahead to the future to take care of our children and our grandchildren. This is the sum total of a garden at Othello Village that they were so proud of that they showed me. This little tiny garden that they just had to show me. I got to show you the garden, you know. I don't know if that resonates with you, but just to see that little tiny growth in the middle of a bunch of tiny homes was really, really inspiring to me, but also sad because it was so precious to them. And it was so easy for us to provide. This is another village where they got a refrigerator in the central unit. So, you know, that's a number 9. That's a number 5, right? Just the kind of thing you do at work, right? Very similar. Simple, easy. Everybody's got a fridge now. This is, I don't know if the video will run or not. Okay, go ahead and run it down. This is it's called Tiny Home Village, not a very original name, but this is 14 huts, and back there is a wonderful family hut that's just incredibly elegant. But these are all done by specific groups. You can see here that the Tulalip tribe built that one, funded it and built it. This is a church, a Presbyterian church locally that built that. There's 10 out of the 14 have different people that spent money and then spent the time and energy to get this together. This is a shower, and then these other ones are bathrooms that are, and that's nice. A lot of these things are porta potties, so it's really wonderful that they have that. This, you can see it's just a box. Now you can go up. I'm very big on lofts, and they didn't do that here, but there's a lot of space above, but that's something you can do with 8x10s really easily. And they have, and you'll see here the young lady that's on security patrol. She's right here at this gate. You can't really even see this as you walk through this wonderful, elegant neighborhood there, because the total front part is just pretty much covered. And that's one of the themes of village life at this level of village, is that they're really not visible. And you'll see other examples shortly. Can we move on? Here's just an example again of a very specific set of solutions. We're moving too quickly, sorry. Okay, thanks. Yeah, there we go. Now, these are just rules. I don't want to go through them, but they're just rules that people made up for that village. There's no, there's no national template. They just, you go into one of these security shacks, and it's all right there. But they've made it up themselves. Here's an example of one advertising saying, "Come and live with us. We're alcohol and drug free. We live out in the forest," and I went and saw them, 25 huts, wonderful place. And here's another one we'll talk about a little bit later. This is similar to Kalani's. This is a really together. Tent City 3, they've been around for a long time. They're mobile. They rotate around between churches and so forth. And that's enough for now. Let me just say, just in closing, that this notion of community, another way of saying that is self-management. And when our officials say that people can't self-manage or it's really problematic, which they did do in June, they're basically saying that community doesn't work. The community can't work. It's not enough somehow. We need paraprofessionals or professionals or something like that. In fact, we have wonderful evidence that it does work really well. And I just want to leave you with that sense that hopefully can provide you the same hope that I feel, that once we turn this key and we really start moving in this direction, we're going to see so many wonderful miracles happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott always has that ability to bring home the really human part of all this, for me anyway. We're bringing back Gregory Fearon, who spoke earlier today on the HEAP program, which is somewhat responsible for bringing us together today. And he advocates for change by attending more meetings than a flock of sparrows. And right now he's going to describe a method for subsidizing rents that hasn't been tried in Sonoma County.
Thank you, Colleen. I don't have slides to show you, but I want you to think about what I'm going to talk about, which is variously referred to as flexible operating subsidies or rapid rehousing or rental assistance or Section 8. And what do all of these things have to do? They all have a common thread, which is they're paying someone's rent. They're giving some operating cash to something. Sometimes it's a private house, sometimes it's a project, sometimes it's a hotel. And that's one way to get things built. That's one way to start something that doesn't exist now. Because as a builder, if I were building something, the way we usually do it is we go get some money from banks or from someone who's willing to loan its money, or housing authorities, or other ways, especially if we're going to go after low-income residents. And we need all that money to build our project, and we put it all into building the project. We build the project on the basis that once we get people in there, the rents they pay are going to repay the loans we got, okay? And that's the normal way that most subdivisions, most building, most developers develop. So it's a design that's predicated on having people who can pay rents. Most of our clients are not in that condition. They aren't full of money. They're at the low end of our income scale, and we're trying to help them get into housing. So we've got to build things that don't depend on rents later on, okay? And the kinds of designs we're talking about, especially, the good thing is the kinds of designs we're talking about today are not expensive designs. We aren't building Taj Mahals for anybody. We're trying to build something that's less than what our society has expected us all to want. And so we don't have as much money to have to collect. Now, this money, HEAP and CSD and NDSL and a lot of other money that's coming down the pike, has a possibility of taking some of the money and putting it into what they're calling flexible operating subsidies or reserves or, rental rehousing or other things, which is nothing more than handing to the community a pot of money to either as a project give them 15 years worth, 5 years worth, 10 years worth of rent. So you don't have to collect it from the clients. Or a process that pays for some part of the thing and makes it so it's so cheap you don't have to have the rent. What I'm arguing for today is that in our application for HEAP, that we put something, and I'm not sure how we get a common name for it, but it's basically a subsidy for the rents for our clients. Now, in the past, we've looked at that, we've said, oh, that's Section 8. Our clients get Section 8 and they do that. Yeah, but Section 8 has a whole lot of restrictions because it's federal money that comes down through the process and it can only be used in certain ways, and that frightens a lot of people. Okay, we often say that that's, some other federal or state-run chunk of money. That the bottom line is it has too many regulations on it, too little flexibility to even fund any of the things we're talking about. The good news is this money has fewer regulations, fewer restrictions. Now I'm going to give you a couple examples. Santa Clara and San Jose, several of the other counties that have housing authorities attended a meeting 2 weeks ago in San Francisco that some of us went to. It was a meeting of all of the low-income housing developers in the state, the Burbank equivalents all over the state. And they had a workshop on homelessness, wherein some housing authority staff and some homeless activists and service providers shared the model they were developing, which said if you give some money to a really motivated housing authority, a housing authority that really wanted some money that they could use to do more than the traditional stuff they had been doing, to have less regulations on it, so they could give it to an agency that wasn't the traditional agency, or to a project that wasn't totally code-based or was an experiment. Now, there was some flexible money. And the housing authority director that I talked to from San Jose said, the formula is to have a strong housing authority with some money and a bunch of things they can spend it on, a bunch of projects that don't have to qualify for traditional HUD funding. And we'll share and set up those rent subsidies, either project-based or individual, and we'll be creative. And that's what I'm arguing for. Let's open up the rules, make them locally, and I know that, I'm going to say this for David Goyen of the Housing Authority of Santa Rosa, he really wants to play. He doesn't want money simply going to providers directly from HUD. He'd like to be able to have project-based kinds of certificates that we design that fund the rents of our lowest income people. And I know that CDC is probably interested in the same thing. I'm willing to take a chance to build a CDC or Housing Authority Santa Rosa or Cloverdale or anybody else who want to partner with their own communities providers and have rent subsidies be one of those alternatives.
Thank you, Gregory. June Michaels is frustrated. She realizes that the government needs our help. She's with Sonoma Food Runners and is currently working to house extremely low-income people.
Actually, frustration got me to start Sonoma Food Runners. I was serving on AB 939. It's a county-supported agency, and their goal is to reduce waste in the county. And when I found out in 2014 with the waste characterization study that what was going in the landfill was 30% organics. You're like, what's organics, right? It can be tree limbs, it can be the grass, it can be all that, and food. 18% of that 30 was food. I said, wait a minute, that's a lot of food, that's tonnage. That's tonnage of food that's going in the landfill. We have hungry people. And one of my colleagues says, well, start that food thing you keep talking about. So I started Food Runners. What I do is go around and pick up excess food from hotels, caterers, farmers markets, wherever. I get calls all the time. I don't really have a day off. But And I also pick up other hotel supplies that are excess. Yesterday, I went to Sonoma, the Fairmont, picked up 350 towels and 250 pounds of toiletries. Gave them to shelters in Sonoma, and then I came over here, and my first stop was a homeless drop-in center, because they need towels and they need toiletries, especially with the mobile trailer too. So there's a place, it's all about sharing. If we shared, we wouldn't have need on that. And another frustration that's growing, and I know you're all here for the same frustration, of seeing what's happening to our fellow neighbors, our homeless. They are our neighbors, they're our friends. They're somebody's sister, brother, daughter, whatever. They didn't, as a child, say, I'm gonna grow up and be homeless. No. Somewhere, somehow, something failed them. Whether, who knows what it is. And if some of them are on drugs before, some of them are on drugs because that's the way to survive out there. I don't know. But I do know there are sisters and brothers, and we gotta do something. We can't push them around. It doesn't work. It doesn't solve anything. It just takes away from the moral structure of everybody. Everybody. So, what I've been wanting to do, and I've been looking at property. I want to get a piece of property with the gold. Gold is electricity, water, and sewer. So, those are already in place. You have a structure, preferably a house on it, and that can be the beginning one with the showers and the toilets and, you know, those wonderful things that we take for granted sometimes. But also have maybe a structure where we can build the small houses. And I love Miguel's model of the Sunshine Village. It's very similar to something I did down there. And use local products, you know, and have people help, have businesses help. I've been talking about doing this community village, and there's different people in the community that step up. I want to help. I want to help. And what I want to do is give a return, financial return. A small financial return, but a huge community return. Because we all win when people are housed, right? And if we stop that shuffling around. So afterwards, if anybody wants to talk about somebody who's interested, who's in helping put this together, I have the food rescue, and I'm working on this, and I need help. I need people there's about 10 agencies, if we look at Southwest, regarding the tiger salamander, at least 10 agencies to call and put the proposal. I need somebody to help me with the numbers. I want to get numbers from Miguel, what his number. We'll start off, if we have to make it code, and then educate them as we go away from the code on there, possibly on that. But also, one reason why I'm really drawn to the community kitchen and community room with all the rooms coming into the main one is, God, I don't want to cry, but a few years ago, I live in a townhouse community, and we're all waving, and we know each other and stuff like that. I didn't know one of my neighbors was having problems, emotional. A young girl in her 40s. All of a sudden, she's in the hospital and she's dead. And all I knew was like this wave, you know, all the time with this smile. And I don't want that to happen again. If you have to go to a common kitchen, that won't happen. So that's why I'm really very, very passionate about having the community kitchen, so no neighbor who just waves gets past me with if they got something going on, or maybe some other buddy in the community, that we are there for each other. And so, back to the original question, if you want to help in any aspect, you got ideas, I'm so open to all the ideas. I love what Greg was saying about he brings a different area of expertise. Victoria has expertise in creating some of the agreements, and whether we should have some of the government to come in or not, I don't know exactly. I'm just really frustrated, and I gotta do something. And I want people who are frustrated, who want to do something, to come work with me. Okay, thank you.
Wow. Our next speaker, Merlin Davis, has been organizing with the Community Action Coalition since early 2017 and has worked to oppose Santa Rosa's punitive pilot program since its first attack on Homeless Hill last year. That pilot, by the way, is named in Double Talk the Homeless Encampment Assistance Program. The Community Action Coalition is a horizontally structured direct action group that works in coalition with other Sonoma County activist organizations on issues related to social and economic justice. Merlin?
So you're hearing a lot today about solutions, about what we can do. I don't think that's the problem. Look at all these solutions you're seeing. When community gets together, we figure it out. We do it. We say, oh my God, you don't have a roof over your head? We'll give you one. Here, sleep in my spare room. Here, you can use some space. You know, we figure it out. And you're seeing a lot of beautiful ways to do that today, but that isn't the problem. So what's getting in our way? And I saw in this packet that we have here today about HEAP, I think this is kind of interesting. Who makes the decisions for Sonoma County? Who makes the decisions for Sonoma County? The 9-member Sonoma County's new Continuum of Care Leadership Council, with the supervisors, etc. For those, you know, I see a lot of elected leaders here. Technical Advisory Committee from the County Development Commission. Like, who's missing? Where the hell are we? All of us, including those without houses, right? Yes, these are the people who make decisions for Sonoma County. Why? Why is this huge? Why is there this huge glaring hole in who makes decisions for Sonoma County, including the people who are most affected by it? So we're not. The idea of the canvassing that we're doing, we're going to neighborhoods and we're canvassing, is not to figure out a solution. In fact, we shouldn't even do that, because there's going to be many, many solutions, and they're all going to be different depending on the community and the neighborhood and everything, on the circumstances, and we're all very good at figuring that out. So what gets in the way? If tomorrow we didn't have laws against tiny homes in yards, we'd have tiny homes in yards. If there weren't laws against people parking somewhere with their RVs, then they'd park somewhere with their RVs, and they'd live, which is what RVs are designed for, I believe. You know, so the problem here, there's a couple of problems here. One is that we're all really, really, really busy and impacted, and we're all suffering economic hardship, and we're all having trouble in our lives just keeping it together. The system's falling apart, if you haven't noticed. Sorry. Anyway, so that's one of the problems. But we still need to take responsibility for our neighbors. I need to take some responsibility. You need to take some responsibility. We all need to take some responsibility. And often that's just, there's this thing, we're busy and we don't have the time, and somebody else is taking care of it. Right? We've got all these organizations out there. We've got these charity organizations. We've got a city government that does that. We've got a Sonoma County government that does that. But they're not. And I think this motivational part here, I wouldn't have to tell that. I don't have to tell that to the people in the when I canvass in neighborhoods, for the most part, because they're not this close to the seat of power where things are happening, and they don't get all the excuses and all the reasons and all of the bureaucratic stuff thrown in front of them, that telling them why we can't do something. I think we, as activists, have a little bit of a problem in that we get so close to the organizations we're trying to push that we also get subjected directly to their propaganda. So the idea here is to go directly to neighborhoods, go directly to people. And just like a serious political campaign where a candidate for electoral position is going around to get support, we're going around to get support for a direct action. We're going to go around to get support for a solution in a neighborhood where the neighborhood takes responsibility for people who don't have shelter. So The idea is to get a bunch of, find the people who support the idea of some kind of solution, and they'll figure out what it is eventually, but we'll get them to come together and have meetings and brainstorm and bring their concerns to the table, and then reach out to their neighbors, because I might not be the best person to talk to you. You might see me at your door and go, what are you doing? And I said the wrong thing, or you don't know me and you don't have time. But when your neighbor comes to you and says, hey, I went to this meeting the other day and we're really trying to set something up here, and this is someone I have a connection to. So you don't always make the connection to everyone all at once. And that's, I think, where these pilot program meetings are a real problem, because they just say, everyone come together and tell us what your concerns are. And of course, we know the other ways that they use that. It's not really a community discussion. So we're doing this as a social network, doing long, slow, hard work, finding first the people who directly support us, bringing them together, having meetings, having them branch out. We're only in the very beginning stages. The idea is we can't do this, no one can do this on their own. The people without houses can't do it on their own. I, as a activist, can't do it on my own. The city council sure can't do it on their own. The city, all of our government can't do it on our own. And if I go to a neighbor, I can't say, hey, can you do this? They can't do it on their own. So we've got to come together and do it together. And then we can build pressure from the bottom, because it's the only thing that ever gets anything done. And if we've learned anything from all kinds of resistance movements, from labor, from civil rights, from everything, the way that you get the laws changed is by breaking them. The way that you get laws changed is to break them. If you can't sit on that bus, you sit on the bus. If you can't go to the lunch counter, you go to the lunch counter. If you can't go out on strike, you go out on strike. And those teachers did it awesome, they absolutely. So, okay, I'm gonna just give a couple of things about what we've done so far, and then I'll be done. We've gone to a couple hundred houses, and there's 5 of us working on this, but 2 people who are working on it like consistently, week by week. And so 2 people have gone to hundreds of houses. We've made a direct connection with over 100 people. A lot of, knocking, nobody answers. But we've contacted 100 people. A lot of those are, oh my God, I don't have time. I don't want to talk to someone. I don't even want to hear it. I'm busy, I'm doing dinner, come back, whatever. But we've got around 15 people who are really supportive of coming together and figuring out a solution. And we've got 3 or 4 people who gave us answers that are like the usual kind of homeless people are criminal or dirty or blah, 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 or negative. Okay, so 15 that are really positive, 3 or 4 that are really kind of, oh my God, I couldn't participate in this sort of thing. And then a wide range of people who are like, oh, that's interesting, I want to know more. I think I'd support some kind of solution, but I don't know what it is, I don't know how to help, etc. So the reaction for people who can actually engage has been really positive. We're asking that people spread the news, talk to each other, make the supportive connections, that they talk to people in their neighborhood who they normally wouldn't, whether those people have houses or not, and do it in a way that just increases the social cohesion, right? Talk about the weather, talk about what happened the other week, etc. We're asking that people contact us with ideas, and the thing we're passing around has an email address and a Facebook page that we created. Oh my God, get it together so that we can go out canvassing. We're asking people what are their thoughts on transitional villages, and what are their other ideas. What are the current relations and communications like for you in your neighborhood? And with homeless people and with other people, what kind of network do you have? How close have you been to being homeless? If you lost your job tomorrow, how many paychecks? How many paychecks could you miss without losing your home? And then, so, the idea is to next actually call a meeting because we've got a number of supporters and then to have them branch out. So that's the stage that we're currently in. So let's see, I covered everything. I think so. So that's what we're doing. And the other thing is that we want to not do this alone. So again, nobody can do this alone. So we want you to come help us. Come do the canvassing with us if you got some time. And eventually we want this to spread to other neighborhoods. So we've picked a neighborhood in which one of us lives, and so that we can say, look, we're your neighbor, we want to do something, let's all come together. And we want people to do that in their own neighborhoods and replicate this. Of course, it'd be nice to have some results and see how this goes and get some warnings and stuff like that. And we'll get there eventually, but in the meantime, we encourage everyone to get out there and use the skills that they do have, canvassing and making social connections to do that. So, thank you.